Today we're building the ultimate rogue in Dungeons & Dragons, because there's one rogue build in D&D that outshines the rest. It's sneaky, it's deadly, and it's frankly kind of amazing at everything. I'm going to break it down piece by piece, and by the end you'll know the exact feat and subclass combo that pushes this rogue over the edge. Some DMs even hate this rogue because it's just so good. Trust me, I've actually run into this DM. He was not happy at how good I was at everything. But it all starts with the species. And there's actually a couple good options, but we're going with the ultimate, best, perfect rogue. And the best choice is going to be a human. And becoming a human gives you a bunch of stuff. First, it gives you resourceful, so you get a heroic inspiration every long rest, which means you can re-roll any dice roll. And considering rogues' biggest downside is that they usually only get one chance to attack if they're in battle, that is insanely helpful. Then we get the feature skillful. So this gives us one skill proficiency. We're going to grab acrobatics. You can already get acrobatics by being a rogue, but we need to grab other skills whenever possible. And there's going to be a lot about skills going forward. Then we get one of the most important parts of becoming a human, the feature versatile. This gives us an origin feat that we can choose thanks to the 2024 updates in D&D. And we're going to choose the origin feat, Magic Initiate. This allows us to dive into the wizard spell list specifically. The updated Magic Initiate feat allows us to choose any ability score to use for our casting. And this is something I have to note as we're going forward, because you're gonna be good at basically everything with this build, and to be a good member of a party, you need to let other players shine from time to time. So what will make this build best is if you go with charisma. But if you already have bards and paladins or sorcerers in your party that have a lot of charisma and they want to take the lead being the face of your party and interacting with people more often, then maybe you want to focus more on wisdom, or even better, intelligence, because intelligence only has one major class that's able to use it very well, and that's a wizard, unless you happen to be allowing artificers into your game. So I'm going to be going with charisma for this feat, but you can also just as easily go with intelligence or wisdom if it fits your party better. So there is some slight variation here for options, but that's what I'm sticking with. But the whole reason that we went into the wizard spell list is that this feat allows us to get 2 cantrips and 1 first level spell. We have a few options for the first cantrip, which you can grab things like Minor Illusion to help you with sneaking around and distracting people, or Mage Hand to help be a little better at pickpocketing if you really want to. But personally, I think the best option is to actually go with Dancing Lights. You're a human, you don't have dark vision, and the cantrip Light will allow you to make something glow and create light. But Dancing Lights is essentially the same thing, but it allows you to put lights up in an area around you, and it doesn't have to be directly on you, basically turning you into a spotlight, and for a stealthy character that doesn't really work, so Dancing Lights will work much better. But more importantly, the other cantrip we need to grab is True Strike. The new True Strike really helps for a rogue. It makes it so any weapon attack you're gonna do is going to use your spellcasting modifier instead. So now it uses your charisma if you're following my guide. And the damage starts getting boosted as you level up in your overall build, because the weapon's damage type gets turned to radiant, and then at 5th level it gets an extra 1d6 of damage, 11th level gives you an extra 2d6, and 17th level gives you an extra 3d6. Basically boosting up what rogues do really well, which is sneak attack, but we'll get to that in a second. Then there's the most important first level spell you can grab as a rogue, and that's Find Familiar. Rogues are often relied on for being a scout for the party, and a familiar can really help with that. But more importantly, they can give you guaranteed advantage on every single turn, because familiars can't attack, but they can do plenty of other stuff with their action. So summon an owl into existence, because owls get the feature flyby, so they can swoop down, do what they need to do, and swoop back out without provoking an opportunity attack, because familiars don't have a whole lot of health to go around. But when they swoop down, they can provide the help action, giving you advantage on your attack. And since you usually only get 1 attack, that is insanely helpful. not to mention the additional bonuses from sneak attack. But that covers everything you need for the species. Now we need to dive into the background. There's 3 good options depending on whether or not you needed to go into intelligence or wisdom, but since we are focusing on charisma, the best background is charlatan. This allows us to boost up our dexterity, constitution, and charisma with 1 point each. But even more important than that is that it gives us the skilled feat, and the skilled feat gives us proficiency in 3 skills. So we're going to pick up Arcana, History, and Investigation. Not to mention, being a charlatan will give you Deception and Sleight of Hand by default. So you already have 6 skills and you haven't even chosen your class skills yet, because when you become a rogue, you get proficiency with light armor, simple and martial weapons that have the finesse or light property, and you get 4 more skills. So we're going to grab athletics, perception, and perception especially because that is one of the most used skills in D&D. And then to be a better face for the party, grab persuasion. It will allow you to convince people of doing basically anything you need. And finally, you're a rogue. You need stealth. And we can start boosting up those abilities at first level of rogue with the first feature you get, expertise. So you can double your proficiency bonus with 2 skills. We're going to focus on the most important ones for most characters, and that's going to be perception. You need very good perception. I cannot emphasize that enough. But since you're a rogue, you really want to be good at stealth. It is very important. It's going to save you more often than not. Also at first level of rogue, you get the feature sneak attack. So once per turn, you can do an extra 1d6 of damage. But there's some requirements. This only happens if you hit a creature with a finesse or ranged weapon. The extra damage is going to be the same as whatever the weapon would deal by default, but in order to deal that damage, you need an ally within 5 feet of your enemy, or you need to have advantage on the attack. And no matter what, you cannot have disadvantage. So we already have that covered just by having a familiar. We always have advantage on 1 attack, and we can only ever do 1 attack, so that means we're completely covered. Because it's great to always have sneak attack, but it's more important to always be able to hit in general, and having advantage really boosts up your chances to hit overall. And I should note, sneak attack damage upgrades beyond 1d6. It gets an extra 1d6 every 2 levels in Rogue. So it's just going to get stronger and stronger. Also at first level, you get a sneaky way to talk with Thieves' Cant, and ever since 2024, you get a weapon mastery. And the absolute most important thing for a rogue is to make sure that you hit. And so a weapon mastery should help you with that whenever possible. So we're going to pick up 2 weapons that have the Vex weapon mastery property. Vex makes it so that way when you hit a creature with an attack, the next attack you make against that creature before the end of your next turn will automatically have advantage, which means that you have another way to gain advantage on top of your familiar just in case anybody takes your familiar out of the fight. So we'll grab a rapier for close combat, so you have some sort of melee weapon, and a short bow. That way you have a ranged option, both of which give you the Vex weapon mastery feature. Then at second level of Rogue, you get the feature Cunning Action. So as a bonus action, you can dash, disengage, or hide. Hiding is also beneficial because you can become stealthed and then have the invisible condition, giving you advantage on an attack, just giving you one more way to get advantage reliably. Then at third level of Rogue, we get to choose a Rogue subclass. And this is probably the most important choice for any rogue. But before we dive into it, we need to talk about this video's sponsor, Describe. Describe is made for tabletop role-playing, and it just boosts the experience overall. It really helps dungeon masters especially because it gives you all sorts of situations, plot hooks, characters and NPCs to throw in, all with descriptions and tons of stuff. Plus, you have tons of maps to be able to choose from, and those maps are enhanced as well because you can hover over certain features of the maps to get additional descriptions or things to help you out, because sometimes you need those extra details. If you want an extended 30-day trial to try it out in your D&D campaign, feel free to use my link in the description and comments down below and use the code DNDBuilds on checkout for that extended 30-day trial. And thank you to Describe for sponsoring this video. But let's dive back into the Ultimate Rogue and pick a subclass, because there's lots of great rogue subclasses, and a lot of people might kind of argue with me on this one. However, I have some evidence to support my choice, because because a lot of people love the arcane trickster rogue because it gives you some spell casting, but that kind of detracts from what a rogue is best at some of the time. It might enhance some of their general capabilities. And you might even be saying, well, what about Fireball? You can cast Fireball. Sure, you can cast Fireball, but not until a really high level, and most other casters can cast it way earlier than you. Unless you can actually target a lot of creatures at once, it's not going to do an insane amount more damage than your sneak attack will. You're more focused on attacking one creature at a time, maybe two if you do it right. Inquisitive rogues are pretty good at doing the talking and deceiving. Assassin rogues are good at getting the drop on you and wearing disguises, and a lot of people really love the ability to do insane amounts of damage when you do a major surprise attack. However, that doesn't kick in until 17th level of rogue, and that is way too long to wait. Soul Knife is pretty cool because you can do psychic damage with a special psionic dagger, but you don't really need that because we already have True Strike, and True Strike is allowing us to turn our weapon into radiant damage, so we're pretty well covered there. And swashbucklers are good at one-on-one combat because they have another way to get sneak attack, but you don't really need that because you already have a familiar helping you out and giving you advantage all the time. So with all of that, the best option is a phantom rogue, and it's actually the best option for a lot of reasons. And the first one kicks it off right when you choose this subclass, because you get the feature Whispers of the Dead. So every time you finish a short or long rest, you can choose any skill that you're not proficient with and gain proficiency in it. So if you're in a situation where you know you might need certain skills, this will be absolutely amazing to have in your back pocket. And you can swap out the skill proficiency every single short or long rest. And that's just for the skills. It also boosts up your damage as well because you get the feature Wails from the Grave. So you get a number of uses of Wails from the Grave equal to your proficiency bonus. And immediately after you deal sneak attack damage to a creature on your turn, you can then target a second creature within 30 feet of the original target and deal half sneak attack damage to that second target. They'll wind up taking a slightly different type of damage, dealing necrotic damage to that second target, but that's still a way to deal damage to a second target, meaning that you're now dealing an additional almost 50% damage to an additional creature, which is one of the biggest downsides to being a rogue, is that they don't have extra attack and they don't have area of effect spells. So it's usually hard to hit multiple creatures. So this addresses one of the biggest downsides of a rogue in combat. Not to mention, it doesn't even require any sort of saving throw or anything like that. It just deals the damage. The only downside is that you're limited to an amount of uses equal to your proficiency bonus, but you can address that later. Then the final feature you get at 3rd level of rogue isn't from being a phantom rogue, it's just some default rogue stuff with steady aim. So as a bonus action, you can give yourself advantage on your next roll. But as soon as you use this, your speed becomes 0. So you basically have to stop and center yourself and get a good shot lined up. But we don't have to rely on this too much considering we already have multiple ways to get advantage. Then at 4th level of rogue, you get an ability score improvement. And usually I would focus on dexterity because that's what rogues are best at most of the time. It boosts up their stealth and most of their attacking. But since we're relying so much on True Strike for our one attack that we deal, which utilizes charisma, and charisma also helps all of our social stats and social skills, we can boost up our charisma instead. So here is our starting ability scores, min-maxing a bit, but we don't even have to worry about those lacking scores anyways, and I'll tell you why shortly, but we'll throw 2 points into charisma for now. Then 5th level of rogue gives us the feature Cunning Strike. So you can give up 1d6 worth of your sneak attack damage in order to get some other effect added to your damage. But since we just hit 5th level, we're not actually giving up a d6 worth of damage anyways, because since we can use True Strike for our attacks, that gives us an extra d6. So taking 1d6 away from our sneak attack damage means that we're still netting the same amount as if you were a default rogue. You can give up a d6 for poison, possibly poisoning a target for 1 minute, trip, knocking a creature prone, or withdraw, allowing you to move up to half your movement speed without provoking an opportunity attack. 5th level also boosts up your defense a bit with Uncanny Dodge. So if a creature hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to take whatever damage you would take from that attack and cut it in half. 6th level of rogue gives you Expertise, so you can double your proficiency bonus in 2 more skills. We're going to boost up investigation to start because investigation is often used for finding and disarming traps. So having expertise in it is probably going to help you stay alive. Then we're also going to boost up deception because persuasion is super helpful for convincing somebody of something. But when you have to deceive somebody, it's usually very important that they believe the lie. So boosting up that skill with expertise is even more important. Then at 7th level of rogue, you get evasion, which is another defensive option that's added for every rogue, making it so anytime they need to make a dexterity saving throw to avoid taking damage, they automatically take half damage. And if they succeed on the saving throw, they take 0 damage instead. But one of the biggest boosts after 2024 of D&D is that they moved a feature to an earlier level. And they moved it all the way to 7th level. And it's called Reliable Talent. So now, any skill that you have proficiency with, you can't roll less than a 10 on the dice. That's before you add your proficiency bonuses or any other modifiers. And since you have the skilled feat, boosting up the amount of skills you have the additional skill from being a human, and you have expertise in so many skills, you're really good at a lot of stuff. Not to mention, the Phantom Rogue can swap out skills every short or long rest, so you always have whatever's necessary in your arsenal. Outside of a few skills, you should never be failing a skill check unless your dungeon master is totally fed up with you being good at so many things and they want to just throw an insanely high difficulty challenge at you. Because that is something that they do not focus on enough with rogues. Most people that build them don't see them as awesome, skillful masters of so many things because everybody thinks of a bard. And that's silly because bards get jack of all trades, which gives them half their proficiency bonus in any skill they don't know. But a rogue can't roll less than a 10 in anything they are proficient in. And if you take this skilled feat, that means that you're covering most of your skills already, making rogues way better when it comes to most skills. And then at 8th level of rogue, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and throw 2 more points into charisma, maxing it out. 9th level of rogue gives you another feature from your phantom subclass called Tokens of the Departed. And this whole feature allows you to essentially collect souls of the people that you're defeating in battle. These souls are collected in trinkets that you have, and you can have a number of those trinkets equal to your proficiency bonus. If you have at least one of these trinkets on your person, you have advantage on death saving throws. Also, the most important thing is that when you have these trinkets, that Wails from the Grave feature allowing you to do additional damage to a second creature after doing a sneak attack, you can destroy one of your soul trinkets in order to use Wails from the Grave without actually using up any of your Wails from the Grave usage. So now you can do additional damage to a second target, not just an amount of times equal to your proficiency bonus, but twice your proficiency bonus. And every time you destroy a creature, you can collect their souls, getting 1 more use. So you have a constantly refueling amount of this extra damage. And then there's one final thing you can do with these trinkets. You can destroy it and ask the spirits a question, help guiding you to make the appropriate choice in whatever situation comes up. And then at 10th level of rogue, you get another ability score improvement. And even though we've focused on charisma, it's still important to not ignore our dexterity because it helps our armor class since we only have light armor, and it helps most of our stealth stuff as well. So we're going to put 2 points into dexterity. And it's kind of nice that rogues get this additional ability score improvement at level 10 because most classes don't get that except for fighters because they get a ton of ability score improvements, but having an extra one for rogue is very helpful. 11th level of rogue gives you improved cunning strike. So now you can use 2 cunning strike options at the same time, but you have to pay the cost for each of them. But that's also okay because you're only giving up an extra 1d6. And since you just hit 11th level, that true strike is doing an extra 2d6, meaning that you're still netting the exact same amount of sneak attack damage. 12th level of rogue gives us another ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and boost up our dexterity by 2 more points. 13th level of rogue gives us a very interesting feature from being a phantom, and it's called Ghost Walk. It turns you into a spectral form and you have a 10-foot flying speed. It can last up to 10 minutes, and it makes it so all attacks against you are going to have disadvantage. But even more importantly is that it also makes it so you can literally walk through solid objects. So no need to pick those locks anymore, you can just move right through the door. But if there's a door with an arcane lock or some sort of straight up wall blocking your path, you can just phase right through it. It's an insanely powerful ability to have in your arsenal. 14th level of Rogue gives you Devious Strikes, giving you some new options for your Cunning Strike ability. But these ones cost a little more. You can get Daze, costing you 2d6, forcing a creature to make a Constitution saving throw, and then they can either move, take an action, or a bonus action, but they can only do one of those things. You can spend 3d6 for Obscure, blinding a target, or give up a lot of your sneak attack damage, giving up 6d6 for the feature Knockout, knocking a creature completely unconscious. And this might seem like a bad idea, but knocking a creature unconscious will make it so you have advantage, and it's automatically a critical hit if you're hitting a creature within 5 feet of them. So dishing this out early to get a creature out of the fight is insanely powerful, and then follow up with an insanely powerful critical strike. Obviously, after you took everybody else out of the fight, because you gotta make sure that everybody is taken out before you bring the other person back to consciousness by attacking them. 15th level of Rogue gives you Slippery Mind, giving you proficiency with Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. And then 16th level gives you another ability score improvement, but we're going to take a feat here. We have a lot of skill proficiencies, and we can't roll less than a 10 in any of them, but we want more. So we're going to grab the skilled feat again, giving us proficiency in Nature, Medicine, and Animal Handling. These skills pop up pretty randomly, so it's hard to prepare for them, but having them ready to go can be pretty helpful. And now you can't roll less than a 10 in any of them, meaning that you're good at almost everything. And I really mean almost everything. You have proficiency in all but 4 skills. And remember, you can swap out one skill every single short or long rest. So personally, I grabbed Insight from being a Phantom Rogue, and that skill you want to have ready, because you're going to be the face of the party most of the time. But if you know you're going to be going into some sort of religious area, grab Religion. If you're going to be tracking a lot of people through the woods, grab Survival. If you know you're going to have to put on a big show for everybody, grab Performance. Or if you want to take a bit more of a sinister approach, you might need Intimidation. That's really all that's left, meaning that unless you happen to have a situation where you run into the 4 skills you don't have access to, you are rolling at least a 10 on every single one of them, and you get to add your proficiency bonus to it on top of it. So it should be super, super rare that you're ever failing any situation. Not to mention you have a heroic inspiration every long rest. So if you do fail by some weird coincidence, you still have some way to re-roll it. Like I said at the beginning of this build, you're gonna be good at pretty much everything. Then at 17th level of being a Phantom Rogue, you get the feature Death's Friend. This gives you 2 features. First, you can change your damage type to both the first and second creature that you hit with your Wails from the Grave to both being necrotic damage if you really want to. But also, when you finish a long rest, you automatically have at least 1 soul trinket available to you. Now, these aren't very powerful features, but that's okay because it's level 17. It's kind of rare for a lot of campaigns to get to 17th level anyways. So having a less awesome 17th level feature is really okay in my book, because it's rare that you're ever going to use that anyways. Then 18th level of Rogue gives you the feature Elusive, so no creature can have advantage against you, at least when it comes to attack rolls. And then at 19th level of Rogue, you can choose an Epic Boon. Now, there is an epic boon that would give you proficiency in all skills, but we already pretty much have that covered outside of those 4 skills, so that would be kind of a waste. Instead, I would go with the boon of Irresistible Offense. So all of our bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage always ignores resistance, but we get a very important feature called Overwhelming Strike. So if you roll a 20 on an attack roll, you get to deal extra damage on top of your bonus critical strike damage. You actually get to deal an amount equal to the ability score of whatever you increase with this feature. And with this ability score, we're going to boost up our dexterity. That brings it to 21. And the extra critical strike damage is your ability score, not your ability score modifier. So that means if you score a crit, you're doing an extra 21 damage. And you already have advantage on pretty much every attack you're ever going to do. So you're slightly more likely to score a critical hit. But just in case you want to make sure you score that crit, at 20th level of Rogue, you get the feature Stroke of Luck. So if you fail any d20 test, you can automatically make it so you rolled a 20. It doesn't say that you automatically succeed. It says that you automatically rolled a 20, which is a critical roll. So that would activate your overwhelming strike ability. You can only use this feature once per short or long rest, but a guaranteed extra 21 points of damage that you're dealing on top of the extra damage from critically striking in general is so insanely powerful to have at your disposal. I wish there was just generally more love for rogues, and that's why I wanted to make this video. If you want access to a character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon. I include character sheets for everybody. I again want to thank Describe for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. And again, if you want to sign up using my link in the description or comments down below, make sure to use the code DNDBuilds for an extra bonus on checkout. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button. And I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to play the ultimate perfect rogue in your next D&D session.